Today we're going to modify this moon from this hot spot ridden glow. It looks pretty good on the camera, but in real life or in person, right here is a hot spot of LEDs, and you have a mild glow around the edges. But it doesn't look too bad on the film, but you can still see that it's brighter in the center. We're going to change it from running on 4 batteries and having the hot spots to running on a power port or an AC adapter, and we're going to try and put in some lights. RGB lights. That way the moon can be changed from the grayish white color it is now. We can make it, a blood moon or a full moon that's on an eclipse, so it gives you that reddish glow, or a harvest moon where it's a yellow or a golden, or hell, make it a green moon. Maybe it looks like you're going to use it for a Halloween display and you want the moon to be a different color than just the whitish gray. So what we're going to try and do is take some of these, which run on 5 volts, put it inside this moon, which is set for 6, and we're also going to make it so it can both run on batteries and an AC adapter. So, stay tuned. Alright, I went ahead and, instead of wasting the time unscrewing all the screws that are around the edges, and then breaking the seal because they have a little bit of glue. I don't know, some of this isn't factory, like this looks like something got melted to it. They have a yellowish color, which they had a little glue seal around the edge. Breaking all that free to open this bad boy up and see how it looks on the inside. I have done moon conversions before for displays, so this one's a little different. Besides, it's still got that sticky goop. There's your moon face. This one has a, I guess you'd call it a fan feature to help diffuse the light. So it's actually kind of a neat idea. That way the LEDs aren't pointing directly at the screen and creating super hot spots like I have had in the past. But unfortunately, it still causes hot spots, and the reason the center's so bright is those two. Those on the sides are diffused pretty well. So you can see there's more screws around the edges, probably to remove this diffuser. So take them out. Probably won't be using the diffuser once it's reassembled. Might test it just to see what it does, but I think it would cast a shadow, because when I do the moon conversions, I don't run the strip lights around or in the center. I run them around the outside edge and point them towards the center. That way you get a more even coat or an even color. So some screws on the back to help hold it in. Take the screws out, try not to lose the screws, and voila. And looks like we have some corrosion on the contacts, or some nasty putty, one of the two. Apparently I didn't know this, the moon has a light sensor. It has a lot of interesting things that probably don't work, which is why I was at Goodwill, and I just turn it on and it stays on, doesn't matter if it's dark or not. So probably this circuit board probably doesn't work right, which is fine. It's all going away. But we can see how much room we have in here. We have a pretty good deep base. Most likely this disc won't be used, but we're going to do some testing. So I'm going to go ahead and get this stuff taken out and then be right back. That way you're not, again, watching me unscrew things and remove masking tape. Alright, as you can see, everything's been removed. This is, whoops, kind of nice that it tells you this side's the battery pack, hot and ground, or positive and negative. Kind of a interesting thing that I've never seen on a plastic molded anything. So now we're going to open the box here. Get that out of the way. You see it comes with some nifty little instructions. Yes, this does move with sound. This is the sound controller. It tells you that warning, this can exceed the power of certain USB ports that draw a maximum of 500 milliamps or half an amp. This unit says it draws 1 amp. I've used this before. It does not. It draws closer to 1 1/4, which doesn't sound like a lot of difference. You plug it in the back of your TV to make this illuminate around your TV, like the picture shows. And you can burn out your USB port. I know, I did it on my TV. I plugged it in, it overdrew and burned out the port. Wasn't very happy because it says it's a 1 amp rated system, when I load tested it, it's actually 1 1/4. So be aware, if you have the ability to load test your USB products. I'm going to grab something real quick. This is a load tester, or a display, but here's a battery pack, and then you can kind of see there, it tells you that my battery pack's running low. It's only putting out 3.67 volts, but the amps is 0 because there's nothing plugged into it yet. So, and then if I plug like a light into it, I should probably turn the light upside down so you can actually see. It says that this light is drawing 0.08 amps, or 7 to 800 milliamps at 3.26 volts. So this is how I tested my other string of these that burned out my TV, and that's how I found out what it draws. So, oops. You can get things like this on eBay. That's where I got this one. I think it was like $5. And I use it all the time. I use it for, it's a dual output, which is kind of nice, but I do use it to test loads on my USB circuits, as well as even like that battery pack. It showed it needs to be charged because it's down to only 3 1/4 volts, give or take. So it's kind of a nice little tool to have around. So back to the project at hand. If I can open the bag. There we go. Like most LEDs that come in a strip form, it comes on a wheel. And you can see it's cuttable. It's got the little cut lines every 1.5 inches. So when we string this around the moon, the excess will be removed. So what comes in the kit: the light, the sound controller, and the remote control. Sound controller also has the IR sensor, which is very important. So, just so you can see how this works. On here is an arrow to point to the positive. Now the positive is covered by this heat shrink, because, you know, they thought ahead. But if you go down here, I'll see if I can get it closer to the camera so maybe it'll focus in and not get burned out by the light. You can see it says BRG plus 5. So this bottom rail, the way I'm holding it, is the 5-volt rail, which is on this where the arrow goes. So just plug it in like that. I know this is getting weak, but we'll use this see that it works. And you see if I tap on it to imitate music, it changes the flash patterns. So here's the remote. Off. On. You got different sound displays. More sensitive, less sensitive, to almost no sensitivity at all, which this requires a lot to make it flash. Personally, I use it on number 1 or number 2. You don't have to. If you don't want to use this style, you can use a generic light string RGB that comes with a remote. It just doesn't have this bottom row. But I think this would be a nice addition. You play some spooky music and have the moon flash to the beat, which is why I chose this one. The principle is the same, so let's get to it. Alright, normally, at least on the other moons, I would adhere the moon to this inner lip, the lights to this inner lip of the moon. This one I can't because of the bosses for the screws, and it fits on this inner lip. So I'm going to stick it on the edge of this inner lip to get an idea how it looks. This notch here matches this notch here, which is for the IR sensor that the moon originally had, which we're now going to make place for that one. So, gonna just kind of measure out approximately what it's going to take to do this moon. If you want to use like a fabric tape measure and just measure the circumference, you can do that too. And then cut what you think you need. So, right here is where I'm going to cut it. They do make stuff you can get online that plugs into this gel, makes contact with those contacts. You can reuse this string. Some of them you have to cut the gel off with a X-Acto knife or something. But this string is still good. You just have to not confuse this with any other string, because this is a 5-volt string, where a lot of them you buy on eBay, they're 12. So you put 12 volts of this and you're gonna burn it out. So we're going to put it back in its original box in just a moment. So, what I'm going to do is just test fit this to make sure this is actually going to work. I'm going to try and get it to go around this circle as best as possible. Of course it doesn't want to, because it's rolled the opposite direction of the curve of the moon. Oh, it's gonna fight me the whole time. Alright, just for testing, we're just gonna test to make sure that the cap of the moon fits on here. So we'll just use the curve and not worry about it at the moment. Other than that piece moving, as you saw, I could close it. We'll do it again. This piece moved, but trying to line up the notch. So you can see the moon is closed. What you hear rattling is that end hard plastic part that Plugs into the control box. So now, because this is double back tape, for anybody who hasn't used this stuff before, this white peels off. You can see kind of right there where it's separating. I'm going to stick it to this inside edge, but a lot of it isn't going to adhere to anything. It's going to be floating in air. If it starts to move, if you use hot glue, run a hot glue bead along the edge of this in here, it'll hold it in place. So first things we're going to do is we're going to try and get it to stick to what is there, since again we're fighting the curve. Try and keep it in frame. Personally, I like moons as night lights and mood lighting features. I don't know. I just think the moon has potential. You want to make a sun, it's just this bright whitish yellow ball. But moons, you can change the colors. They have texture and patterns. So making moons like this are kind of nice. So, just to get an idea what it's going to look like, we're going to assemble the moon and then plug it in. This is where having small battery packs comes in handy. Some people complain that the little ones don't last as long. Well, when you're testing things, they work just fine and they're not too expensive. Alright, let's kill some lights and see what it looks like. Sorry for all the noise, and bam. You do get a little bit of hot around the edges, not as much as you did in the center, but as you can see, it has a very nice glow. Very even. You don't get that big white line. You can get rid of some of this by tipping them inwards so they reflect more off the back. And yes, you can even use the IR sensor directly through the moon. It's not even protruding out of the side yet. But you can see it has a nice glow. I mean, can you imagine having a nice animated display, Halloween Town, and nice red moon rising in the background? You have a fall harvest display. This is yellow. Doesn't kind of look like it. There's white, so you got like a night light or a mood light effect. You want a blue moon to go along with your blue moon. An orange moon, in case you're not too big on the yellow and you want a little bit more muted, a little bit more golden. And if you just want to go weird and go purple. Or green. And you can have it pulsate. Strobe. And of course, if you do the music, and every time it flashes, it's going through the different colors. So, because again, music works on the beat or the vibration. I have no idea why I went out of focus. So, this, I think this is going to work pretty good. It's just getting a little dimmer since the battery pack's dying, but can't really tell on the camera. It still looks really nice. It has a very nice glow, but in person it's getting dimmer since the battery pack's only putting out a little over 3.5 or about 3.5 volts now. So now we're going to finish the project. We're actually going to put some hot glue around the edges. We're going to install the AC adapter, like I was telling you, to power this, and we're going to, or put a USB port in there so you can power it off of a USB cell phone charger. It doesn't take a very big one, but you can use a, let's get some light back in here. Woohoo! So, just a standard wall socket charger, or if you want to take this with you on the go for a Halloween display, like a trunk or treat, you can, if you make a USB, you can plug it into a USB for your car. Of course, these are just older ones that have been lying around. That's why they're big and bulky, because everything today is much smaller. So let's continue and get this thing finished so we can see a nice display of it. Alright, we're going to start the process of installing everything. The IR sensor goes here, where the notch is that lines up with the hole. This IR sensor is thicker than the original, so we have to cut off 2 little pieces of plastic to make it fit. Using a set of cheap flush cutters to try and trim as best as possible. And then I'm going to clean it up with the blade of a X-Acto. Because there's a little notch right here that this slides into. We're also going to give it a little bit of a bend, so I'll go around the corner. I'm going to attach the box in here. I'm going to hot glue it like that. Off camera, this doesn't fit the diffuser. It doesn't fit inside here with these LEDs, so we're not going to really play with it anymore. Just going to go with the way it was, as it was in the last shot. Start warming up the hot glue gun. So yeah, we're just going to attach this in here with some glue, have this run around right there to plug it in, and have this, we're going to glue this in here to keep it in place. Then we'll deal with the incoming power. That way this can be mobile with the battery pack. We'll put it as a 6-volt battery pack with a resistor to lower the power down so this doesn't burn out. We'll also make it probably with just a USB plug, so that way we can just plug it into any cheap USB connector in the probably thousands of cheap cell phone connector chargers you can buy on the market, or probably have lying around your house. And that way you can take it and plug it into your car. I would not recommend trying to use it to charge the batteries. I wouldn't use batteries that are rechargeable. Just alkaline, so you get the better power for this. So, I'm going to wait for the hot glue gun to warm up, glue this in, plug it in, and then we'll be back to test, or excuse me, set up incoming powers and a switch so we can turn it on and off. So, I'll be back as soon as the glue gun is done. Alright, everything is now glued. It's taken some time, gotta let it cool, but you can see the box is glued in. I've extra glued the IR sensor because of the bend. It wants to pop back out. So that's why this cable's glued the entire length to help take the stress off this until I can put the cover back on. Alright, so the only thing that's not glued down is the cable for power. Oh, and I did, just because, you know, it's just sticky, I did add the little dabs of glue in between each one of the screw bosses. So not only is the sticky tape, which was only touching a very small edge, holding it, now on the front side I have glue that spans about 2 inches in between each one of the screw bosses, just for extra support. So I'm going to go through my piles of random junk. We're going to find a switch. Hopefully I have a 3-position. That way I don't have to use the original, but you know, if I have to, I have to. And I'm also going to find a female, this is the male side, end, so we can cut a notch and stick it through this plastic. So you can just use a standard cell phone charger base with a USB to USB cord, just a standard full-size cord to plug it in. So that way it's the dual power I was talking about. Battery, excuse me, or AC from your wall socket using a cell phone charger, or DC technically if you want to use it off of your car, if you want to take this out on road trips. But you don't have to do this for just the moon. This principle can be used for most any project that you want to backlight or internally light or externally light, because it doesn't matter. But this is just a how-to on how to modify certain things to make them look better or more personalized. So we'll be back in just a few. I gotta go locate a female USB cord. I have some buried somewhere, and get my box of switches. Once we get that, we'll start doing the wiring, test it all out, make sure it works, screw the cover on, get some shots in the dark. Alright, I got my USB cable that I'm going to sacrifice out, and a switch. As far as the hole goes, I did test fit the switch. I had to trim out a small piece of plastic on either end and then sand the lip down so this switch would fit. It's literally about the thickness of a construction piece of paper, fatter than the factory one. So, but it does fit and protrude through, so it can be used on the outside, just like the other one did. And then this is a beats the hell out of me, a data cable, but it's a male. On this end there's 2 males and a female. We're going to use this end. So I'm going to cut it. We're going to find the hot wires, which should be the outer 2. One's hot, one's ground. They're usually red and black. Some are like pink and gray. We're going to cut it open and see. But this will be my sacrificial connector. If you're trying to do something like this and you're looking for female USBs, you can buy them on eBay or Amazon. I got this in a package of USB cell phone chargers at Goodwill for $2. So this was inside with about 20 cell phone chargers, which I then sacrificed to use on projects such as this, where I'll plug it into a wall. So you can look around. You might have some lying around. They also make some that don't have this plastic cover, because it's going to have to come off. That is just a metal, so you can actually crimp it into your project. I have one, I just can't find it. So we're going to sacrifice this one and go from there. So in case you're wondering what's in here, some people do. This is a ferrite core. It's just a piece of ferrite metal. Helps reduce with magnetic interference. But since we're not using it on a computer, I'm not using it in the moon. So, and I'm not going to throw this away because these ends are still good for other projects. So we're just going to set it aside. carefully squeezing to get the outer casing off so we can see what the inside of this looks like. We got shielding, because again this was a data cable for a computer. This frayed end should be connected to the casing, the outer metal. That's how it normally is. But we can always just double check. And we'll peel off the inner shielding. We have red, white, black, and green. Red and black are the two that we're going to be concerned with. The green and white, they're useless. Those are the center two pins, or your data pins. So I'm going to strip the rest of this off, and I'm going to try and cut off this plastic rubber. Let's see what I got that's sharp. Yeah, screw it. It's always fun. That's why I wish I could have found the one that was already set for new projects. But, you know, if you all have to do this at home, you'll see what's inside. So, they use an over-molded protector, since this already has its casing protector right here. Just fine. I'm not cutting this piece off because this actually, you can see the wires helps hold the solder so there's no stress on it, so it's a stress relief. But I am going to trim this piece back just a little bit more. And I'm not fully closing the jaws because I do not want to cut the wires on the inside, especially the red and the black. Peel away some of the shielding. So I don't need any of the shielding wire either. Again, it's not a computer. Any magnetic currents aren't going to hurt the moon. So we've got our 4 wires. Expose some of the red and the black. I'm setting my meter, or excuse me, my power supply to 5 volts. And whoops, off camera there. We're hooking the black up to the black, red up to the red. There you go. Just using the light as a tester. But there's your 2 hot. Excuse me, your hot and your ground, or your hot and your negative. So the green and the white wire, just gonna cut those off, get them out of my hair. So now this can be hung on a wall. Oops. There's your notches, so you can position the moon apparently in 3 different ways. So we don't want anything sticking out this back flat part, because then it wouldn't fit flush on a wall. And if I stick it out this flat edge, especially if it's USB, unless you get a 90 degree, which they're expensive, I have seen them, it's not going to work. So I wanted to have it come out on this tapered edge, as you can see here, so that way it's sticking out at an angle, and it will allow the flush mount. Of course, we're not going to do it on the side, because that would be stupid. That would look funny on a wall. So we're going to have it come out on the bottom, which is where most cords come out anyway. So now, dead center bottom, we have a slight issue. We have all this in the way. So we're going to off center it just a hair, which will allow it to be compensated with these 3 screw holes. So if I went directly across from this one as an example, I'd be here. If I went directly across from this one, I'd be here. And if I went from this one, I'd be where the IR sensor is. So I am going to stick it just to the left of the IR sensor, right in there. So this will go on the inside. Now a lot of people wonder, well, if you push it through this little tab here, yeah, that'll hold it. Let's get rid of the white background. There we go. But you can actually take these fingers, I wouldn't use the top 2 or the bottom 2, I'd use the side 2, and bend them out to help hold it in place. If you look at a USB connector, the male side, you got those 2 and those 2, but look, there's nothing on the side. So when you plug it in, what gives it a little tension are these fingers on the top and the bottom, because they get into those holes. But there's nothing on the sides. So when you use the sides to help hold it in, what I'm going to do is make the hole, the rectangular hole, push it in up to this lip, so it'll be a nice tight fit, and we're going to bend these fingers out to help hold it in. And then of course we'll probably use super glue or an acetate glue versus hot glue for a stronger hold in case it gets yanked. You don't pull this out. So, but that's how you can salvage a female USB, male is the other direction, it's the same thing, for projects. And you can buy them online or find them at a thrift store. So we're going to mark where we want it. Now we don't want the hole too big because this is a very, very small lip. So to do that, take the male side, trace around the male side. On the inside, right there. So I kind of see it. There you go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill a couple of holes. Now we're going to use like an X-Acto knife or a sharp-edged, small bladed knife, and we're going to slowly make the 2 circle holes into a rectangle. We'll drill on the inside of the lines, so that way it's not too big, because if it's too small we can make it bigger. If it's too big we can't make it smaller. And I want to use as much of this metal lip as possible to help hold this in place. I'm not planning on taking it off of the wall, but if I decide to take it out to a Halloween event, hang it in the back of the car, trunk or treat, you know, Halloween party, you know, something like that, I want to be able to ensure that if it gets bumped or pulled, I don't rip this out. So we are going to do our best to prevent that from happening. some drill bits and a drill. What I'm going to do is I'm taking the side of the male connector and getting a drill bit that's just slightly smaller than it. That way I don't have to drill a super small hole and do a lot more cutting. I can drill a hole that's just slightly smaller and do a little less cutting. Always watch your fingers. Don't put your fingers on the back side of the project. Or you might end up drilling through your finger. I've never drilled through my finger, but I have put other things through my finger from not paying attention. So, there we go. 2 holes. Now I just need to find my box of X-Acto knife blades and X-Acto knives, and we're going to start cutting it. Oh, there it is. Cut the figure 8 out of it already. So basically going to sit here and slowly trim this to where that female connector will slide in with a little bit of tension until the metal lips fit perfectly against it. There it is. So I'm sure you don't want to watch me sit here and shave it for the next 10 minutes, so we're going to stop and I'll be back as soon as I can get this to slide in, and we'll continue. Alright, there it is. That melted section I was talking about, that's where I went through. But it's cut out, it's put in flush, and then the 2 outer tabs are bent. And just to show you that you can still stick something in it, plugged in, unplugged. So now what we're going to have to do here, since we know these are the 2 hot wires, we're going to have to get them onto the switch, also with the battery pack, and this. Now this, I can either put another female in here, or I can just cut this, which is what I'm going to do, and cut off the male end and just wire it all into the base, and then hot glue the wires down so they don't flop around. So I wanted you to see, trimming it with a X-Acto knife. I recommend a sharp blade. Slowly working at it. It only took about 2 or 3 minutes actually, because this is some cheap plastic and it cuts like a hot knife through butter. I did have to remove those grooves. I don't know if you remember seeing them, those textured spots, because it was higher than the metal, so that way this had a nice tight fit. And then I bent the fingers out. I have not glued it, and when you glue it you got to be careful, don't get any glue inside these finger slots. I'm only going to glue down the tabs on the edges with some super glue, and I'm going to try and get some glue under the edges here, just a little bit. What I use is I use Gorilla Glue, and I use the one that has the brush and nozzle. Unfortunately the brush is frayed, so I'm just going to use a cheap paintbrush, like the type you would use for watercolors. I had pulled one out, just can't find it now. Oh, there it is. And I'm going to dip it in the glue, and then I'm going to just carefully go around the edges. So that way this is more solid, although it's pretty solid now. I just don't want it coming out or distorting and twisting. So super glue is stronger than hot glue. Hot glue is great for a lot of things, but there's just certain things you can't get by with hot glue. So this is super glued in because of the bend. This will be super glued in. The rest of it will be hot glued to hold the cabling down, and of course you saw the hot glue to hold that down. So, and the switch shouldn't be glued in at all, since it has a switch cover that holds it in place. So we need to get the soldering iron fired up and get this cut. We'll get all the small pieces together. We'll get it all set with the battery pack, and we should be good to go. So give me a few moments to clear some of this trash off, make some space, put the drill away since we don't need it anymore, and get the soldering iron going so we can get this finished and we can see what this completed project looks like. Be back in a moment. Alright, we're back. Started to do the soldering and didn't realize it turned on camera. So soldered and heat shrunk the negative. We're going to connect the negatives together onto the battery terminal for the battery pack. So I'm gonna tin it, and then there we go. So the negatives are now together for battery and incoming power. We're going to also take the negative out of here and connect it there as well. So next step is we're going to slice this open. We're going to get a little bit more. As you can see, even though it's got the four, or it had, just cut it off, still got the four plates on the inside. It's only 2 wires. So, and like I said, generally on USB they're red and black, but I've seen them as pink and white and pink and gray and all sorts of weird colors. So, the reason I cut this back so far is I'm going to make the hot connect over here, but I want enough to feed the ground or negative backwards. So I wanted to have enough of the slack to do so. So like I said, I just barely put any pressure on it, just enough to break the casing, and then slide it off. So same thing on this one. We're going to tin it. Solder it to the negative of the battery. There's the hot. The hot is actually going to go to the switch. So technically I could have made it shorter, but it is what it is. So on the switch, there's generally little holes in these pins that stick out. Move the white backing away. But this switch is used. Scavenge. You can feed the wire through the holes and twist them, or you can just solder it to the 3 tabs. When the switch is in one position, 2 tabs are connected. When you click at the other position, the other 2 tabs are connected. So what I'm going to do is when it's in the on position, the battery's on. When it's in the off position, it activates the USB port, which means the batteries are off, and unless something is plugged into this that provides power, nothing will turn on. So we're going to use some helping hands. And we are going to have to solder This one will be soldered to the center, this one will be soldered to one outside, and the other one will be soldered to the other outside. So we're going to take a piece of red wire so we can keep the color code together. I'm going to strip the ends. We're going to tin them. Should just use the helping hands for this since they're sitting there, but this is fine. Try not to breathe the fumes. We're going to tin the switch. And then we're going to connect. Before I do that, just a little bit longer than I need. Turn them off. I'm going to have the wires come out sideways. And the reason I'm doing this is it has that battery cap cover that presses straight down. The wires come out straight up. The wires can get crushed, bent, or pinned over and then create an arc. So I'm going to have the wires come out to the sides. So when we put the battery cover on, excuse me, the switch cover, man, everything's good. And then there's our two hot wires. Just like so. So. If you hear anything in the background, like a beeping sound, the house next door is being renovated or repaired, so there's big trucks. I can hear them. Not sure if the camera's picking them up. So, before we do that twisting I started doing, let's get some heat shrink on there. If you forget to slide heat shrink on, you can always desolder and resolder, or you can use electrical tape, or if you have liquid electrical tape, you can use that too. I prefer to use real heat shrink and use electrical tape for other purposes if I can, but I have forgotten. And I'm not ashamed to admit I've used electrical tape for things. And it does happen. Electrical tape comes in handy too. Comes in handy for big areas. So, fire up the heat gun, look at the fan. Set it back down. So, the main power from the USB, which is 5 volts, is fine. We're going to tin the power going to the controller so we can get this on the switch. Utilize the helping hands again. That wire is also sideways, so that way when it's in the off position and the cap's on it, we get power to the right spot. using small needle nose pliers to set the switch. Since my fingers don't fit in there with the control box. The exciting stuff. There's the switch. So, this one, which goes here, I need a resistor. Let's pull out some resistors. Be right back. Alright, I got a 22 ohm resistor. We're going to solder in. Would have been done faster, but had some people selling stuff come to the door. At least they came when I wasn't filming. Then you would have heard the doorbell and the door dog and all sorts of freaking fun. But anyhow, doing Ohm's law, and I'll have to make a correction. This is by Monster. Monster only draws 0.6 amps or 600 milliamps, which is why it says anything above a 500 milliamp power supply or USB output on your television and or computer, it might burn it out. The one that burned out my TV was Sharper Image. I had to go double check that too. Sharper Image says it's a 1 amp, it's 1 1/4, and it spikes to 1 1/2, and that's what burned out my television. So Monster is 0.6 or 600 milliamps, which is far better as far as using it on TV. I know my TV, even though it has a burned out USB port, is a 1 amp rated output. So technically, if I would have had a Monster set of these, I could have made my television light up just like the picture. But I got a Sharper Image one, and well, now I have a USB port that does absolutely nothing on the back of my television. So anyhow, we're gonna solder this. And the low ohms is just to help keep it within the tolerance. Since this thing draws a lot of power. I'm not going to heat shrink the resistor, just in case it gets hot. But we're going to there's nothing that's going to be near it to arc, since the other connections are over here. So there it is on battery. And I have a USB plug right here. So if I flip the switch, hit the power, nothing happens. Plug in the USB. Voila. So now it's a dual power moon. I'm gonna go kill some lights and get a better look. So there's our ring. we'll flip it to battery. If I can get my finger in here, here it is. So now it's on battery, so I can unplug the USB. Like so. So now it's portable. So I'm going to fire up the hot glue gun now, and we're going to glue all the wires back down, and we're going to see what it looks like with the face on. Kill the power. What I'm going to do is I'm going to glue that wire down there. We're going to glue this wire to the battery pack. We're going to glue this one down here. That way there's no shadows. So when the light's on here, it doesn't create a shadow over on this side of the moon, and vice versa. We're trying to make this look as pretty as possible, of course. So I don't want any shadows, which is what that diffuser does with the LEDs around the outside. If you go online or use an Ohm's law calculator for the resistor, since the unit draws 0.6 amps, it tells you the resistor you should run at about 170. Unfortunately, that doesn't work. It doesn't hardly even turn on. The reason is the low resistor is just to stop the spike. The 6 volts won't hurt the unit as much, but the amperage is what does it. The batteries together put out enough amperage that it could damage this controller. So this is just a current limiting 22 ohm resistor. You could use as low as a 10, but you'd want to go to a half watt versus the quarter watt because it will get hot. So still waiting for it to heat up. So it's a nice clean install. I guess while we're waiting, quickly throw the battery cover back on. Almost. You can do this to a lot of projects. You can even put in power ports like these right here. These are the ones that take the 3.5 or 4 mil, I don't remember off the top of my head, jacks. If you do Limax, it's the same size as a Limax plug. You can make it 4.5 volts like your houses. That's why I have these, is because I use the Limax power supplies. And if I wanted to do it that way, I could just screw it right through here. I have multiple types. This is a type that is threaded and allows you to put a nut on the back and tighten it down. So you don't have to use USB. I'm just using USB to make it more mobile and to show you that you have options. I could still stick one of those in here too and put another switch in, or put a 3-position switch in, so it goes from USB to AC adapter to battery. And at that point we're just getting, well, stupid. You don't need so many different types. Our society today, we have availability to most any type of power supply. Get the spider webs off from the glue. I'm going to hold it down for a second. Try not to burn myself. think we're good. Oh, that side's still moving. Just put a little right there. What's nice about hot glue is it's very versatile and it's relatively inexpensive. Mine's a little bit bigger than some. I have at the time was called commercial grade. It uses the fatter sticks and it gets really hot. I've gotten 3rd-degree burns from it before. I don't like the small hobby ones with the really thin sticks. To me, they just don't get hot enough. And you're limited on the type of sticks. Oops, still moving. So while this is cooling, the reason I don't like the small ones is these are Gorilla sticks. They're not very long, but they're 4 inches long. And then you can get really long. And these bad boys are 10 inches long, or twice as long. That's why I like the bigger glue guns. They last longer, for my opinion, as far as what you get per stick. And you also have the choice of length. This one's clear, so when it dries it's crystal. This one has that yellowish tinge, so when it dries it gives that yellowish tinge. The clear stuff I usually use for stuff you can see, and I try to use the yellow stuff for internals. I just forgot to swap the stick. Not a big deal. They're not that expensive. Yay! Alright. It's all there. Let's drop a cover on this bad boy. Get it all lined up. Make sure it's lined up by sticking in a couple screws. I'm only sticking in a couple just to hold it together so I can maneuver it and move it around for... I'll put the rest in later. And now we're going to give it a test. Power, flip it back to USB. Light. And turn off this one. So brighten it up. There we go. Bright moon. We can dim it down. It's as low as it goes. It's as bright as it goes. We got a red moon, green moon, blue moon, white moon, purple moon, teal, which looks like a lighter blue in the film or the picture, yellow, which to me looks orange but is yellow, and there's orange, which actually looks orange, but in the screen of the camera it looks kind of a pinkish peach. And we can go back to the sound, or it goes on vibration, and then this is called Fade 7. This is Fade 3. No idea why they call it that. This is Jump 7, which is more like a rapid color rotation or strobe. and this is jump 3, which is just RGB, red, green, blue. And then apparently jump 7 is all the colors, so you get the full 8. So if you're epileptic, you might have an issue. Then you can use the fade buttons to slow it down or speed it up. If you've used any of these light controllers, they're pretty generic and they're pretty simple. But this should look really good hanging on the wall. I truthfully like the color of the blue and the green. I'm surprised the green looks good through the grayish white cover that's on top. And just to show you it will work, we'll flip it over to battery. We'll disconnect the USB. Red, green, blue, orange, yellow, teal or light blue, purple, and white. So, and fade and rotate, or jumps as they call it on here. Focus! There you go. So, it does work on battery, and it does work on USB. Hopefully this was educational enough for you, and hopefully you learned something, or if you have any questions, you know, put it in the comments. We'll try and get back to you. You can always email us at randomjchannel@gmail.com or find us on Facebook at the Random Junk Channel. Hopefully this helps you with any future design creations. Again, you don't have to use flashing colors like I did. I wanted something different because my other moon is white, which after the video is over, I'll include a couple of still shots of that one. And I wanted something different. Also, if I do a Halloween event and I want to go out, I can take a moon with me. But anyway, thanks for watching. See you next time.